Howdy, everybody. What's up, Chuck?
Looks like there's 4 commissioners here, but I think we should wait a minute and see if I'm sure we're going to have some others join.
Sure.
So I'll give them a few more minutes.
How was your river trip last night, Mary?
Oh, it was lovely. It was lovely. Saw all sorts of bald eagles and so many herons, and oh, it was just beautiful. Different ducks. It was a lovely time. So thank you.
We hiked Tuke with both my girls. Made it all the way up on Sunday, so that was a big accomplishment for us.
Okay, do we have it? Well, there's John, Kevin. That's 5 of us now, right? Kevin, Trish, Gabriel, Jacques, and myself. So we're waiting for Evan and Sarah. John, do you want me to give him a couple minutes or should we start?
It's up to you, Madam Chair. You're the boss.
Oh, well, I would like some, since you will be running the workshop, what your preference would be.
Well, this is a scrum, so I think it's good to have as many as we can.
Okay, so let's give it a minute. Then I see you're home, Trish. When did you get home?
I got home on Tuesday.
Well, welcome home.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the planned date when I was coming home anyway, so it kind of just all worked out, I guess. I felt bad leaving my nephew there with I was telling Chris about it this morning, my brother's estranged ex-wife. So she's not a good person. I know, so that's been my nephew is like a superstar. The kid's 26 and he's just an amazing dude.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we have 6 of us now. That everybody but Evan. Has anybody heard? Is Evan planning on coming? I haven't heard otherwise. You've heard that he is coming?
I have not.
Well, let's start. We can at least begin. Today is Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. The time is 1:33. I'm opening this workshop of the Grand County Commission. Present are Sarah Stock, Kevin Walker, Tricia Dean, Gabriel Wojtek, Jacques Hadler, Mary McGann. Also present are Clerk Auditor Quinn Hall. Whoops, my participants went away. Quinn Hall, Chris Baird, County Commission Administrator, and Mallory Nassau, Associate Commission Administrator. So let's get started, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, I guess it is, for our 3rd in a series. Hopefully there won't be too many more, because I know you guys really enjoy this. Maybe you want more. So we'll be moving on, I think, to a 4th or 5th one, just as we start fine-tuning it. So the goal is to develop a vision, mission statement for the County Commission, and then a number of important value statements that support it, and then to develop a strategic plan out of that, of course, and then a county or a commission, a community strategic plan, which will then fit into the general plan, which will help center a lot of the elements in the general plan, like land use, which is a big one, transportation, trails, parks and recreation, environment, social, and economic. All those elements that go into sustainability, climate change. It'll help settle that. It should be a very long-range document, should be thought of as something around 20 years and thought of in those terms, although some of those things might come out to be a bit more, appear to be more short-term. The other thing it needs to do is it should be anchored by indicators. It should be ways of measuring the value statements or the objective statements within the vision and the values that are prescribed. So with that, are there any questions about the process so far through Mary, to anyone or Mary?
Is anyone?
Okay, so I'll carry on. We did a PEST exercise, politics, so political, economic, social, and technology last time. I'm going to jump to that in a minute. We're going to review some MOAB indicators that actually come from Utah State University. There's a health and well-being index. I'm not sure if all the commission members have seen them, but it's pretty well done. I have linked into Utah State University to Courtney and a number of the professors there to see if we can get more data that we could potentially put on our website in a dashboard form. Of course, we need to do that internal review before we did that. But that would be helping to us to do an annual report card on the strategic plan and the general plan. So we'll look at a little bit of that. Comments from the last have been all submitted. So those are collated. And what I'd like to do is have each one of you defend your position. So this is, I mentioned, a bit more of a scrum. It's getting into the details of what you don't want to lose and what you want to hold on to. And we have to lose some things, but you want to hold on to mutual priorities as best you can, which is the toughest part. This is the toughest part. Beginning the toughest part we'll get into. Let's see what else. So that's the idea, is each commissioner's kind of weighed in on their values. Thank you for doing that, by the way, and thank you for participating. We'll redraft the values and vision statement over the next week. Depends how you want to schedule this. We would redraft what you've got there and then start drafting a strategic plan that supports what you're after, both in terms of actions and a timetable. That'll take a fair bit of work with departments to do that. So the goal would be to have it at the next commission meeting, potentially, if you're interested in doing that, or maybe a special meeting at some time during budget review. And I'm not sure when the next budget review is, but maybe Chris can weigh in on that. And then developing a motif. A lot of strategic plans will have something that's pictorial and is drawn in rather than just text. So something that appeals to the eye and not just so something describes the project you want to get. And then the commission would then launch into, if they're happy with that, a public and staff review process, which could go on for a while. And we could talk a little bit about our game plan. We've got a planning commission workshop on our second workshop on Monday. There's a lot of material in their workshop, basically talking about the types of plans that are coming forward, the decision-making process. This strategic plan is not there yet, but it's going to be discussed eventually, and the public engagement strategy, which is being drafted now. So that'll be brought forward to the commission with some timetables pretty soon at the next meeting. So any questions about that so far? I want to stop every once in a while, just make sure I'm not talking too much.
No.
Okay. I'm not talking too much?
I don't think so.
Okay. So here is, hope you can all see that. Here is the PEST exercise. And what I did is I took the comments that you made and put them into these brown segments.
I'm not seeing the document.
We're seeing, we're not seeing the pest.
You're not seeing the PEST.
We're just on the agenda still.
Okay.
I don't think you can move between windows. I
No,
think you have to unshare and reshare.
That sounds like Evan.
Evan,
Oh, yeah.
Evan has joined us.
I've been here. I was only 2 minutes late.
You're in the weeds, huh? Hiding in the weeds. Okay, trying to get back to the screen here. I need to close this. Okay, I'm going to close this. Where's the pest? Go. I have to open the pest again. I don't want that. Okay, I'm going to skip and go to the, we can go back to the pest admin here. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at this. This is the well-being index that was done by Utah State University for 2021, and actually it's Moab, but probably pretty representative of the county, I would say. There is a lot of background data, which I didn't include here as far as how the research was done. It should be fairly valid and reliable. You'll see that we showed this to the steering committee last week as well. This is basically talking about overall personal well-being scores of participating Utah cities in 2021. So, I mean, the variation between 3.82, which is 1 to 5, it's 1 to 5, isn't that bad when you look at the high is 4.18. So there's not much difference between the two. You would know better than I do what these jurisdictions are, where they are, what they represent. So that's the personal well-being one.
John, could I just, something that I think would be really useful is to also plot those over time. I think this isn't the first year that they've done that. And
right.
My vague recollection is that Moab dropped quite a bit just over the last couple of years, whereas other cities seem to stay the same. But I might be misremembering that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we would do on our dashboard is we would show the trends over time. And actually, it's in the report anyway. I just haven't included. I just took a snapshot, Kevin, to show what these are. Overall community well-being scores from participating U.S. cities. So this is overall. The other one was personal well-being. You'll see Moab is 3.13, so quite a variation there to 4.06. Still above, still below the average. This dotted line is the average. So the other one was below the average as well. And then, so this is kind of some of the clusters or some of the domains that were actually tested statistically as far as references are concerned. So for Moab, the Moab area, connection with nature was pretty high. Social connections tended to be fairly balanced, 56-44. Education seemed to be really low as far as personal well-being, and so did cultural opportunities. So kind of an interesting analysis. And it would be, as Kevin mentioned, good to look at these from a trends perspective. Well-being domain importance. This is overall well-being, not just personal. So mental health seems to be pretty good. And on the bottom end, cultural opportunities seems to be lacking. Maybe because there's a lot of outdoor activities here, and maybe that's not considered so much cultural. Here's kind of the domain areas that were mapped for Moab, and you'll see them in the various sectors, the overall, the average, lower rating, high importance, higher rating, high importance, lower rating, lower importance, and then higher rating, lower importance. So you'll see that we're doing fairly well connecting with nature, safety and security. This is coming from the previous charts. Leisure time, physical health, living standards. Mental health is right around the average. Local environmental quality. We need to probably explore these a bit more, obviously, as far as the domains are concerned. And then low rating and lower importance, education, income, social connections, and cultural opportunities. Those are interesting because I think they kind of reflect what you've raised in the value statements that you've got so far. And I would say, Sarah, a lot of this probably has to do with the third leg of the stool, it's the social element in sustainability. But the other elements, obviously, that you want to make sure you maintain are the economic and environmental components that are there too. So any comments about that?
I don't see any.
Nobody's raising their hand. Nobody's speaking up. guys-
I'll speak up since I know what it's like to lead a meeting and drone on without enough questions. Always makes me feel nervous. If I understand correctly, you're proposing to use this USU study kind of going forward as a way of just seeing how well our planning is working. And that seems like a generally good idea, but as we know, every survey has its own set of strengths and weaknesses and flaws. And so it would be nice if there were other completely independent ways of trying to measure some of these same things. It might not be as detailed as this USU study is, but I wouldn't want to, sort of put all our eggs just in that one basket.
And that's a fair comment. What we're looking at in the public engagement strategy is a community indicators or a community survey, trends-based survey. We're working on that. We presented some of that framework from a couple of examples to the steering committee last week. Kevin, I don't think you were able to make it. Mary was there. So we actually went through that in our public engagement strategy. That will be a fundamental to actually take a look at what, I don't think anyone's done a community survey here on a trends basis or on an annual basis. So they're pretty reliable too. That's another way to get good information through a survey mechanism. And obviously you want a good sample size to do that. And you want trends over time so that you can start comparing and taking a look at it. And then you want to annually report. When I say we should be reporting, the commission should be reporting on this with administration's help. And then prioritizing those areas as they go forward. We talked about some of that in the indicators as well. We said through a community survey, that might be a good tool to do that. There was a couple of surveys that were conducted, I understand. Now I forget what they were, Mary. These were raised by the steering committee. I think there was one in the...
There was the one for Highway 313. That was in... Now, they have not completed, they're still working on the survey for Spanish Valley, correct?
That one actually has been drafted by the Planning Commission, but we've asked them to hold off until we wrap it into more of a general planning exercise. So yes. That one wasn't conducted, but Emily.
Oh, the other one was the Mill Creek survey.
Okay.
For the management of the Mill Creek area.
That's right. She's left me. I've got a lot of contacts at USU now, and she mentioned the person. I forget who it was. Kara. Is that the name? Something like that.
Kara.
Yes, that's the name. Yeah, Kara.
Kara Dworkin.
Yeah. Is that Kara?
Downwind.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm in touch with her. I haven't emailed back, but we're hoping to kind of get her involved in the discussion too. So I'm not sure what the commission thinks, but I think moving ahead, like Kevin says, we want to be careful about the clinical data as the way it comes back. You want to triangulate, you want to do interviews, ethnographic studies, qualitative analysis, not just quantitative. And you want to check in, and that community survey usually helps with that. There's a lot of good trends-based projects out there, but you still need to explore the various options, what those look like. But without good data, we don't tend to make good decisions. So, and we tend to make anecdotal decisions, and some of those may not be the wisest. So, but I thought I'd start with something that at least we have, which is out there and fairly recent, and there are trends that are there, and continue to work on this from a staff perspective. We have, as I mentioned, Planning Commission workshop that's going to be articulating a lot of that on Monday, and that'll be coming back hopefully with some recommendations to the Commission as we start moving ahead with the next stages of the general plan. Okay, one of the comments that we got, I had put down land for all seasons. We got a fair bit of feedback from a couple of commissioners on that term, and maybe it's reference to the fact that it could be encouraging full-time tourism for the whole year, or different types of things. Well, maybe let's say 12-month activity, let me say it that way. So the other one that came back was Land of the Adventurous Spirit. I think that came from Trish. And Grand County, a land for everyone. I'm not sure who that was, to tell you the truth. It could have been Trish too. And Heart of Canyon Country. Oh, that could have been Sarah too, or the fourth one could have been Sarah. So we don't have to land on this necessarily, but we should at some point arrive at, I think, a name for it's always good to have a name for the general plan. and kind of sets the tone and kind of links into the mission statement. So we won't spend too much time on that. We're going to move ahead, but we'll suggest some names and maybe you can just keep thinking about that. So existing vision that we have currently is we act locally. I think the thing to think about is the key words that you want to defend and want to include in the vision. We act locally, think and plan regionally through managed growth and transparent decision making. So there's not just us, it's thinking locally and regionally. That's the first level. Through managed growth, that is, we're not encouraging full-blown, any type of development goes. We don't want to have a whole range of different types of commercial, industrial, or for that matter, residential uses without thinking about those impacts, both environmentally, socially, and economically. We want transparent decision-making. We want to reach out to people and engage them and have them involved in our process. When I say our, it's the corporate thing. So it's administration and commissions. Strengthening health and safety. So concerns that we might make sure we are supporting the social fabric and whatever agencies are there to do health and safety, while promoting collaborative partnerships. Can't do it alone. We have to be engaging other jurisdictions. That's always the biggest challenge in planning. And that support vigorous entrepreneurship and a grand adventurous spirit. So you guys had some challenges with that last part, I think, especially. So the one proposed one, and this is coming from Sarah. So Sarah, you're up first. You're on first base here. You're going to be able to defend what you have here. So maybe I'll turn it over to you.
I'll just read it. We act locally, think and plan regionally to enable a diverse array of opportunities and jobs in education, maintaining a high quality of life and ample water resources through managed growth, enhance health and safety for all, and celebrate and preserve our beautiful landscape. I changed some things. Basically, I didn't want to I wanted opportunities and diversity in jobs and education highlighted, but not necessarily the central thing that we're working towards in the entire vision statement. I think it's really important to throw it out there that we are limited in water and we need to work towards that in all of our planning. So I like to be explicit about that. And then, yeah, I don't know. I thought other people's statements were also really good, so I'm not going to fight that hard right now.
Oh, you're not going to fight? Okay. That's too bad.
I really support really spelling out the reference to water resources. And I like doing that somewhere, and this could be I think an emphasis here really works.
So Gabe, let me just query that a bit. How do you do that without all the data? We know that the subsurface water table is always one of those difficult things to nail down, and probably always will be. Surface water.
We have a lot of data. We have two different scientific approaches that basically produce the same water budget, which is showing that we only have maybe 13,000 acre feet left to develop if we want to develop every single last bit of water in the valley.
When I talk to Arnie, when I look at his report, it still seems that there's a fair bit of tension between what two fundamental research reports, but maybe I'm missing that.
There's tension in the methodology. One is a physical science and one's a chemical science approach. And there's some unknowns definitely with the aquifer, but both of those processes produced basically the same range of numbers for a water budget. So I don't know, this is where I'm there always is uncertainty, especially with groundwater, and we're always going to be studying it and putting more effort into studying it, and we're never going to know precisely what is happening underground. But we do have a good sense of, we have a lot of data, and all of that data tells us to be cautious.
And we're a desert. Just
And
by the definition of the desert, we have to be careful with our water.
Yeah, this is one of those fundamentals in planning and development, is that you should know what your capacities are for the infrastructure: water, sewer, stormwater, roads. Obviously, environment's a big part of it too. Contamination, hazardous lands, steep slopes, floodplain, habitat protection. Should know what your limits are fairly closely. And you're right, Sarah. You're not going to know everything, and there will always be more monitoring required. But the growth scenarios, those managed growth scenarios, is kind of key to that vision.
And one other point here, I guess, is just that we're living in a changing world, and what we know and monitor for right now is going to change in unknown ways, but we have a good sense that it's going to decrease our water availability. So I'm not sure how we can get more certain with that, but there's a lot of science pointing to like a really high probability of around 17% less available water flowing on the surface. So I don't know.
Okay. No,
like I'd like to
good.
take into account the possibility that we're dealing with less in the future while not knowing for sure what that future scenario is.
Okay, anything else, Sarah, that you, or anyone else that want to comment on that one? So it seems like water should be pretty central to the discussion. I would imagine other services too, Sarah. I mean, that's.
Yeah, just commenting on, I do think water is very important, and I agree with the points that Sarah made about, we're never going to have perfect precision about water, but we have to make decisions anyway. On the other hand, I think in these vision statements, often we're talking about big goals rather than means to an end. And if our big goals are everybody leads a happy life and doesn't die of thirst or anything like that, then having adequate water supply is a means to that end, but it's not an end to itself. But I still think it maybe makes sense to put in there, because we know that's going to be one of our big challenges. It's big structural. Unlike some communities, we can't triple in size, and I think everyone agrees that we're going to bump up against all kinds of limits if we were to grow too much, too fast. And I think that, together with outside economic pressures, they're large enough things that they deserve to maybe be mentioned in this vision statement that's only a paragraph long.
Say that again, Kevin. You'd say you would add what?
I'm sorry, I probably didn't say it very clearly. I was saying, on the one hand, I thought the vision statement should be more about goals than ways of reaching the goals. But on the other hand, I think that and one could argue that availability of water and interregional planning, those are ways of achieving goals. They aren't goals in themselves. But then on the other hand, I think water is such a big, important issue for us, together with a handful of other things, that it probably doesn't make sense to mention it. So it's not that if it doesn't make sense, you can just skip everything I said. It's not.
No. Okay. So you got process and you got goals here. But process towards a goal is pretty important, isn't it, Kevin? Okay. How do you do water? How do you do water resources without planning regionally?
Yeah, that isn't exactly what I was saying. But.
Oh, okay. Sorry, maybe I'm missing that.
I think I kind of understand, Kevin, what you're saying, in that this is the vision, right? It doesn't necessarily, we don't have to lay out all of the issues facing the community or something. And I guess I would be happy to not have it so specific in the vision statement, like referring to water resources and management of them, if we were really clear about our desire to adapt to, well, I'm not sure how else to say it except for be specific, but Never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm kind of foggy headed.
I guess another point is, when we talk about sustainability, I think living within our water limits is a classic example of sustainability.
Yeah.
That might capture.
That's kind of where I was going. Where if we like really highlight that later in our values breakdown, then I'd be happy to let it go of the vision.
Okay. So if we said ample resources, would that help with that? Because it's not just water. A high quality of life and ample resources.
But I think the point is that some of these resources are not ample. So, I would phrase it more living within the constraints of non-ample resources.
Yeah.
But
through, limits, you could say, I mean, hopefully I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Grand County, life on the edge.
Yeah. What is the opposite of this? It's just unrestrained.
Grand County optimizing with respect to constraints. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah. Okay, that's the opposite of the mantra then. So what is the mantra?
I don't know. I mean, there's a limit to how much wordsmithing we can do in a short meeting. So,
yeah, I just want to get your comments. We'll redraft this. This is good discussion for me anyway. It's good discussion. I don't know what you think, but we can recraft some of these things. So, anything else you want to defend here, or support? Maybe not. Defend's the wrong word. Strengthen or highlight here, Sarah.
No, let's go to the next one.
Okay, Kevin.
Okay, so I guess what I was trying to do is avoid anything that sounded like listing buzzwords, though that's subjective, of course, and one person's buzzword might be another person's straightforward way of expressing themselves. So I was just trying to hit all the high points of what we discovered, what we covered in some of the exercises for listing important values. So, we're a small, diverse community. That's something that came up for almost everyone, I think. We're small, people like the small town field, we're diverse, we're not all the same, and we value that, and we have to, in planning, keep it in mind that, we're not all clones of each other. The spectacular lands that surround us have a very big impact on the community. It's why probably most of us live here. It also affects us economically in terms of tourism. Then I guess I'd spell that a little bit in the second sentence. We value the small town feel. And then this next thing is maybe getting a little bit more instrumental. I think a big planning challenge is maintaining the small town feel when external economic forces want to push us to be a bigger town. And so that's maybe not an end to itself, but it's sort of highlight, the same way that water is important. I think that the fact that we have all this pressure, outside economic pressure, is something I think almost every planning decision we make is affected by that some way. In the past it has been. So we aim to grow and evolve in a carefully planned manner. So there's a tension here. On the one hand, we're not just trying to say no to everything. We want to grow and evolve as a community. We're not just trying to keep things fixed. Should I slow down, John?
No, you're doing good.
Okay. But I think carefully planned is meant to evoke something. It's the opposite of any growth is good growth. Let's have as many economic opportunities as possible. And then again, the constraints which preserve, in addition to preserving the small town feel, which we already mentioned, preserve the natural environment for future generations to enjoy. And finally, we value the diversity of our community. So again, emphasizing that point, and want to try to maintain and improve quality of life for all. I think improving quality of life for residents, that's obviously, I think, the most important thing we're doing, or one of a very short list of most important things. And emphasizing for all, again, that goes back to the diversity of our community. For some people, quality of life might be, avoiding substance abuse issues or just getting a decent paying job, whereas for others it might have to do more with outdoor amenities. So we need to, in planning, keep the diversity of our community in mind. So that's what I was trying to capture. I think probably this would benefit by saying something about sustainability or water or some of those things. But I guess I'll stop there.
Okay, any questions for Kevin or?
I really like the sort of plain language approach here. Yeah, the piece about striving to preserve it in the face of outside economic pressure. I agree with the sentiment. I wonder if it's kind of a defensive statement, and I'm not sure if that necessarily has a place in this type of vision statement, in terms of this is a little bit more like active in terms of like what we're going to do with our agency, rather than sort of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but maybe Kevin already hinted at it. It sort of touched on when we were talking about water, in the sense that that piece might more be might speak more to the less to the goal itself and more to how we're going to reach our goal. I really like the word, like, we aim to grow and evolve. Just using the word in particular, evolve, I thought really spoke to me in terms of how we're looking to move forward as a county, as a community. And so I like that a lot. Yeah, those are my comments.
That's good, Gabe.
I think the term quality of life keeps coming up, and I don't know, I'm going to bring it up later, but I'm like kind of banging my head up against the wall on that. Like, I'm not really sure what we're trying to say there, or I'm not sure how effective that sort of term is, but yeah.
I have a couple comments. I don't think the pressure to change is totally from the outside. There are citizens of Grand County that would really like to, have a different philosophy and, want to change Grand County to be larger and more cosmopolitan, or however you want to say it. So I don't think it's just outside pressure. I see it as economic pressure to change towards a less rural feel, or I'm not, because I know we've seen it in our meetings. There are people that don't want to slow down the growth, that want to keep it going, and they are our citizens. So I don't think it's outside pressure. I think it's equally outside pressure, and people which I think Gabriel was bringing up, their quality of life, their idea of a quality of life might be very different than our idea of a quality of life. I think that's a term used that doesn't really capture anything, because it's kind of a, quality of life. What I consider quality of life might be very different from, I'm sure it's very different than what other people would consider.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was sensitivity around the term quality of life, but to me, what it means, it's not very specific, but it does mean, I think when typically contrasted to these sort of more traditional measures of economic growth, like, what's our GDP, and there are these things like that. And I think those types of indicators, which are very popular, things can be improving, and yet at the same time, people, it becomes a community that people don't enjoy living in, even though on paper, by these sort of big indicators, it's doing well. So to me, I think quality of life, it just captures the small but difficult to measure things that make us consider a community a good place to live or not.
Yeah, I agree it's a little subjective, but to me it means like less time in traffic, access to cultural events, access to healthy food, or, I think that like USU does a lot of compiling data about that, different metrics for quality of life. So I'm not opposed to that, but I hear what you guys are saying. It's a little jargony. And I have one thing. I like the sentence, we aim to grow and evolve in a carefully planned manner, which will preserve the natural environment for future generations to enjoy. I think that encapsulates our goal to preserve riparian areas and live within our bounds with water. And I think you could even add like small town feel into that. We aim to grow and evolve in a carefully planned manner, which preserves the small town feel and preserves the natural environment. Yeah, that would just be my input.
You guys are good. You guys are really good. I think you're good. We could actually define quality. We could define these words in the plan too, so they actually come out better. Livable, quality, sustainability. Sometimes those do mean different things to different places, and there's a balance there. So we can work on that. We can wordsmith those. But this is helpful. Okay. Without putting anyone on the spot, any other comments?
I would just say that I was really impressed too. Like all these discussions, I'm like, oh yeah, get it.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some difficult choices with preserving the small town feel as the community grows, because I think what that means honestly is like more commercial zones in Spanish Valley, less of a like, well, I don't know, there's just this big discussion, and I think it could mean a lot of different things for people. Like it could mean walkable stores out in Spanish Valley, or it could mean traveling through traffic to get to downtown Moab. We're gonna have to pick our battles.
There's you know this already, I think, Sarah. There's 10 smart growth principles or commandments that are part of that, the community fabric, the choice of mobility, the feel of the place, the sense of place. Together, that you're building something in the infrastructure that is not car dominated. Although that infrastructure is already there in some places, you're repairing it if you can. In some cases, you remember the visualization exercise, the little one I went through. So working on that part, on what that looks like, that visual identity, is going to be part of the general planning exercise, if that helps.
Cool, yeah.
Okay, we're on to Gabe.
Okay, so I really liked what had been proposed earlier in this section, and I think Sarah and Kevin had written theirs, and I really liked what they were putting down. And my contribution here, what I was thinking more, like in terms of adding to discussion, was like to try to create the most condensed and distilled version possible, just for the purposes of conversation. So I just wanted to see, and just so we maybe had an idea of what that approach looked like. So we are a small and diverse, and I might have outthought myself in terms of the grammar, but anyway, we are a small and diverse community that aims to build resilience. And I tend to like the terms like resilience or regeneration as opposed to sustainability. I'd like to think that we're striving for more, or that we strive for more than just sustainability. But anyway, in jobs and education, in quality of life, and in our landscape and natural resources, all in the face of the social, environmental, and economic challenges faced throughout the rural West. So I was trying to get into that local, regional, kind of the first section of John and Sarah's version, with the kind of that first statement about we think and plan, or we act locally, think and plan regionally, that one, with that last statement. And I do think that there is a lot of value in looking at ourselves within the context of the rural West, because we are such kind of an outlier in the state of Utah. We almost have to look at our brothers and sisters in other sort of rural resort areas across the rural West.
Okay. Resilience is the common word, you know, in climate change, as you probably know. Those are the big elements that you take a look at as far as preparing for the impacts of less water and other resources as well. And adaptation is the other one, of course, that fits into that climate change analysis, which is strategically thinking about how you're going to adapt to changes that are coming, both in the environment and in the social fabric as well. So, and I'm not sure if the state has a climate change, I don't know this, maybe you know this, has a climate change charter or anything, but these kinds of things exist in lots of government agencies now. Some of them are mandated. British Columbia, for example, mandates a community charter based on sustainability, which fits into the general plan. And it's usually done through a project called the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, an ICSP, which has got all the elements that you're talking about in it, and plans for the long future, the longer future, I guess you could say. Anyway, I don't know if that helps or not. Resilience is definitely one of those factors to think about. So that's an fairly easily defined word scientifically. Any comments to Gabe? Or any other comments? Go ahead.
I really liked your statement, Gabe. I like the short and to the pointness of it. I very much like the word resilience when I first read it. And that you brought up jobs. I think I would change the word jobs to employment, or occupation, maybe. But I think that deserves to be in there. And I like that you connect us to other towns in the rural West, because I very much feel like we are a small rural West community, and those are kind of our neighbors.
Yeah, the river actually goes across the boundary, Jeff. It's a western river, for sure.
Yeah, I also agree this does a good job of trying to hit all the high points in a shorter form. Loud scratching microphone at the moment. I don't know what that was. And but I guess one doesn't want to, it's nice to be able for someone to read the value statement and know pretty clearly what it means. And if it gets too short, that those two goals, might be in tension with each other.
Which two goals? Sorry.
Oh, we want to be concise, but we also want to be clear. So if you make it too short, then it may be vague. Of course, I think you pointed out that some of these terms we can define elsewhere in the document to say more what it means. So maybe we shouldn't think of this as a standalone statement that someone would read in isolation from the rest of the document. And that also brings to me, when someone talks about sustainability, I have a pretty good idea what they mean, especially in the context of planning. And maybe it's just a mark of my own personal ignorance, but when someone says resilience, I don't have such a clear idea about what that means. So if we were to emphasize that word, I hopefully we could spell out elsewhere in the document just what we do mean by that. I mean, I think I like in more ecological contexts, I think I know what it means, but but again, that might just be a statement about me and my knowledge of the word resilience. Anything else?
Okay. Yeah, and he actually, Kevin, he's got social, environmental, and economic. So there's the three legs of the stool of sustainability right there.
Right, but I was talking about resilience. Are they also
Yeah,
the three legs of resilience? Are those just interchangeable terms, or?
I think that resiliency speaks to our ability to thrive and change, and sustainability. It's like stationarity. It's like sustainability just keeps us at this level that maybe everybody's not like satisfied with. We could do so much better. We could thrive.
Okay. So resilience has a more positive connotation for you?
I think resilience to me also kind of means like to thrive in the face of something, like there's something that you're up against in some sense.
Yeah, when I teach this class on environment and society, and one component of that class is resource dependent communities. So I always think about a community like Vernal, but we talk about resiliency regarding both social, economic, and environmental factors. Those are the three things we look at. So resiliency is like, does that community have the ability, for example, if fossil fuel extraction dies, do they have the ability to rebuild economically? Do they have, you know what I mean? Socially, can they hang on? So I think he used it. I liked the statement a lot in looking at those three components.
Okay, let's move on. We got a lot of work here. So the next one is Mary.
I think I went off on a different tangent than everybody else, because my statement was more of a philosophy and a vision perhaps in that, and then the indicators were how you measured it. So recognizing that we are part of the earth, and what happens international, nationally, and regionally has an effect, a direct or an indirect effect on Grand County. What Grand County does has a direct and indirect effect on region, national, and the earth. Recognizing that our role as the county is to care for the health and safety of our residents and our environment. Our goal must be the assurance that all our residents and our environment's well-being is protected. We know that we are reaching this goal when. And then I just started brainstorming ways that we would measure that. So I'm not sure if I got at a vision statement. I think I went a little too philosophical.
Well, you've kind of captured some elements, because the way I see it is a two-way street. You're talking about that we are part of a larger regime, obviously, and we contribute to it, and it contributes to us in a positive way. Of course, there's negatives there too, but so is that right, Mary?
Yes, and that our goal is that our main objective is the health and safety of our residents and our environment. And in that, I'm thinking, well, the health and safety of our environment is protecting our water, protecting our air, protecting our soil, protecting our backcountry. It's all encompassed in that statement. And the health and well-being of our residents is that everybody has access to quality health care, that they can have a quality place to live, so I guess I went the opposite of being very specific in my statement and more specific in the goals.
I was going to say your list of indicators is admirably specific, and I think that.
Yeah. And I could have gone on, because it's like there's a lot to say. I mean, it's a lot to say about how we're going to protect the health and safety of both our residents and our environment.
Okay. Is that good, Mary, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think I kind of went, I went off in a totally
that's fine.
different.
That's helpful. As long as we don't have to start over again. You want us to
No.
start up? No? Okay.
No.
Okay. Evan, you haven't said much. Am I missing you, or I see you there?
No, I'm here. Like I said, I was really impressed with how much everyone's thought and wrestled with this and the wordsmithing for sure. So,
okay, we're going to check in with you once in a while, just make sure we're centered the way we should be. Okay, so values. The first one, the existing one, is community character and a range of housing types in the built and social environment. If you remember, we went back to the SWOT exercise, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then I did massage this a bit with the PEST exercise, but not much. And a range of housing types in the built and social environment must balance uses and cumulative impacts with a growth management, natural infrastructure, and sustainability lens that consider mutual planning frameworks with all planning authorities. In other words, you don't do those kinds of things on your own. Sustainability requires partnerships. It's not one of those things you can just say, well, we're going to be sustainable, but we don't need to talk to anybody about this or work with anybody. And including cities, parks, and public lands. Okay, so Kevin, do you want to suggest your?
You asked me to comment on what I wrote again, or?
Yeah, what you've got proposed for the first value.
But I also wondered, since we've already used up half our time, there was also some discussion over email about just listing the values, and maybe that could be an opportunity to prioritize different ones. I mean,
yeah, we're going to get to that. That's coming up. Each person's got, well, Trish had some values and some prioritization.
Okay, so you prefer to do that later rather than first?
I would just put them into that kind of thing. We can,
okay.
And you can prioritize now if you want, sure.
Okay, so.
I mean, it was helpful for me to like have it at least outlined what the value was when I was looking at all the different.
Oh, well, maybe I'll do that. I'll go down to Sarah first and then we'll go to Trish. You okay with that, Kevin?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, you're on, Sarah.
Oh, okay. I guess well, as I was going through it, I was like, oh, it's so many words and the sentences all look fine. And it was just helpful for me to break it down into like, what was the core value of each of the statements? And I think Trish used slightly different. Did you use slightly different? I don't know. I liked what you used also. I thought the first one was regional coordination. There was the small town feel, the mutual respect for differences, the welcoming, approachable, engaged populace, and then responsible stewardship of public lands. The livable community was pretty broad. It was safety and health for everyone, and then support for vulnerable populations. I thought maybe that would be where affordability would be, like affordable housing kind of thing, but it wasn't articulated. So I don't know. And then diverse economy and culture and multimodal transportation. But then I really liked Evan's statements, but after I was like breaking it down, I thought maybe that should just be more broad. Like, I don't know, but I do think multimodal transportation is important enough that it should potentially just be its own value. I don't know, that's where I was going with it. I'm definitely flexible on those definitions.
Okay, and these encapsulations are in order of priority for you?
No, I had my priorities written down elsewhere. Should we do that now, or?
Would you mind doing, did I see that? Maybe I missed that.
No, I thought maybe if multimodal transportation became sustainability, I would rank that number one. Otherwise, I liked responsible stewardship, and then livable community, and then mutual respect for differences, small town feel, regional coordination.
You're too fast for me.
Oh, sorry. And then
livable community. Sorry, what was after that?
Sorry, I'm translating it from numbers into, let's see. After that was the welcoming, the mutual respect for differences. And then small town feel, regional coordination, and diverse economy.
Okay. That right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would do something with multimodal to make it more of a kind of a at least
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the different prongs of sustainability being factored in throughout the entire general plan. But I don't know, reading the RFP that is on the agenda for later, I also just want it to be really clear to whoever is riffing off of this general plan that we want to live within our bounds, that we want to like do smart growth and factor in our resources. So that's why I feel like sustainability maybe should, or resiliency or something like that should be one of the values. But I don't know. I'm curious what other people think.
Yeah, I kind of saw a lot of the transportation stuff as just like we've got all these existing plans that we plug into the general plan. So it's like, where do we fit the transportation plans and the airport plans and the drainage plans? So organizationally, it kind of fits nice, but I think that could also fit under, you know, a livable community or something, being able to get around within the community and out to other communities. Or so I don't have a strong feeling of whether one way or another of whether item G, the transportation, stays on the list or not.
If I could jump on this, one thought I have is it goes into the E, which is the item that I had, which I have been struggling with for the past few days and just reflecting on it. And it just makes me think that things like Sarah had mentioned before, like affordability of housing, but also maybe accessibility of transportation, speaks more directly to the item of livable community. Because what I was struggling with safety and health, like we're sort of sworn in to already to protect safety, health, and well-being. It's almost like, it almost seems superfluous. I don't want to make it like to add it into this plan, because it's almost seems implied that that's what we're doing as a county. And so it seems like sort of drilling into more specific outcomes like transportation and affordable housing might be more appropriate, in addition to, but I do think that support for vulnerable populations, some type of that element is important to continue to include.
One of the elements in a general plan, even though this is kind of thinking backwards, Gabe, is that a public safety master plan actually starts to consider the built environment to help manage crime and engage people more, and think about in terms of target hardening, that is bigger locks and bigger fences and more gates, to think about opening the community up more. Gated communities tend to close those off. And even though you may not consider that to be a serious health or safety concern, it can be over time. It can lead to less mobility. It can restrain transparency in the community itself. I realize we don't really have some of those like you would find in some bigger jurisdictions, but that target hardening and gated feel is one of those things that leads towards kind of negative consequences for community well-being. At least it can. Now, but if you don't focus on that, we actually wrote this into the general plan in a couple of times, that we would not allow gated communities or cul-de-sacs. Let me say that cul-de-sacs are a bit different, but they tend to close off communities. I realize some people like to live on cul-de-sacs, but so that's a bit more of an integration question around place transportation, mobility, community feel, sense of place, I should say, which all have health and safety aspects to them. Safe routes to school is another one, a really important element for people to be able to ride their bike. I think it was Evan that said that, or your kids can ride to school here without too much concern. So having pathways, I realize that's the city thing, but it's also, we have a very urban environment in a lot of places too. I thought I'd just throw that out there.
I know when I talk and work with the Multicultural Center, one of the things they bring up to me all the time is the lack of sidewalks in the county. That a lot of our workers that are working somewhat under the radar are living out in Spanish Valley, and they have to walk to work. And how when they're walking home at dark, they feel very vulnerable because there's not a sidewalk for them to walk on. So they're walking on the side of the road at night. So yes, it's a big deal for a lot of our Hispanic community, our lack of sidewalks.
Yeah, I guess after thinking about this a little bit, I do think transportation, mobility, walkability, all of that does fall under livable communities, but it's such a big thing that perhaps it does deserve its own. And then under livable communities, I think highlighting kind of the support stuff that the county does, like working towards affordable housing, working with the vulnerable populations. Like, I think highlighting some of those like existing programs that we have are important separately from transportation. Maybe I'm making this harder. Just
No, that's okay.
Well, let me try to make it even harder by proposing a kind of a reorganization of this list. I think some, I'm imagining that the final product is going to have, some relatively short list of values, and then there will be a longer section that lists some things that go into doing that. And I think some of the items here should maybe be demoted to spelling out what others mean. So starting at the top, the regional coordination, to me, that's like it's a means to an end. That's how we achieve the other things on the list, but it's not, I would never like move, if I had to move away from Moab, I want to go to, someplace in Kansas because they've got great regional coordination. That doesn't, it's not something we notice directly. It's a way of influencing things that we notice directly. So to me, that one doesn't belong as part. It's not part of a vision. It's how we achieve the vision. It's not the thing we're trying to get. So it's very important. And so I think it deserves to be emphasized, but not in this part of the document. I think item B, I'll slow down since you're still talking.
No, we're good. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Item B, everyone mentions that a lot, so that certainly deserves on the short list. But item C, to me, that's just spelling out what item B means in a bit more. What do we mean by small town feel? Among the things we mean is this welcoming, approachable, engaged populace. To me, that's an aspect, maybe about half of what small town feel means. So I don't think it deserves to be a second item. Again, I think everything there is important, but it just, should be indented as a sub bullet rather than one of the main bullets. Item D, that's something that gets mentioned a lot.
D.
Yeah, so D. I'm leaving D on the short list.
Did you say D the last time? You say B last time?
I said B last time. Yeah, no, I think
sorry.
You've got it right. Yeah.
Oh, I do have it right? Oh.
Yeah, I think. Yep.
No, because I didn't. I thought you said D, so I thought you said D was good.
Yeah, B is good. B as in boy is good. D as in dog is also good.
Okay.
I mean, good meaning, yes, leave it on this short list. Livable community, yeah, that's fine. E and F. But G, I guess the next one I wanted to quibble with is G. To me, that's just part of the livability or quality of life thing, but it's it doesn't rise to the same level as sustaining public lands. And again, so I would tend to fold that into some of the others. I also think for a small town like ours, these transportation issues aren't as crucial as places where you might be spending an hour or two commuting to work each day. One of the luxuries of living where we do is that the transportation, and again, they're not important. I'm just saying it should be mentioned somewhere in the document, but maybe not in a list of our 5 core vision things. And then I think in item H, Sarah was saying that the sustainability didn't really come out in anyone's and above, and I agree with that comment. I think we need to work that in somewhere, and we some of the vision statement talks about that directly, but I would have some add in something that corresponds to H. So that is my 2 cents worth.
Okay, to encapsulate what you just said, Kevin, from my understanding, you're saying that the 7 that we have here probably could be condensed to 4.
Yeah,
five,
or maybe
5.
5 if we had
Or 5.
sustainability or something.
Okay, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, if you remember, Park City actually had theirs condensed to 4 kind of core values. Not that we have to follow that, of course. But. Okay, Sarah, are you okay to move on to Trish's ranking? Yes. Okay, Trish.
So I just took the 7, John, and I just kind of pulled out either the word or words that I thought were the most important, and I placed them in order, in my priority order. So small townville, livable community, stewards, economic development, respect for diversity, coordination, and I guess that was the regional coordination, and then multiple mobility. So, yeah. But we've just had a pretty long discussion. So that was just my list.
Well, I think one thing that really stands out in the way you broke it down is the respect for diversity value that otherwise gets subsumed into economic and cultural diversity. So yeah, I'm not sure. What do other people think? Is it a standalone, or should it be broken? Or is it okay in that other list as a team? I'm not speaking very well, I'm sorry.
I guess I agreed with Kevin's comments in terms of that element being encapsulated in the small town feel, and because I partly think that's what makes small towns effective, is that we're small and we all know each other and we do mutually respect each other. I don't know, my 2 cents.
Yeah. How would you define the small town feel? I guess we've kind of done that a number of times. So you would put diversity in here, Gabe?
Knowing one another.
You would put...
I suppose so. If we're talking, value number 3, respect for diversity. Yeah, I guess, yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, that's kind of the diversity and sort of viewpoints, and is that like a overarching? I guess that's a diversity. I guess I need to be clear on what diversity.
Yeah.
Is being referred to.
I mean, mutual respect for differences.
Yeah.
Does to me sound more like it fits in with small town feel than diversity, like with a big D or something, but I think they could both be in there as long as it's articulated what we mean.
Yeah. It should be in there. Sometimes small town feel can feel anything but diverse. When I go to a big city from here, I feel like I live in a place that's not very diverse at all. So I like that it is with the small town feel and that it's called out.
So a small town feel usually has that reference to mixed use, walkable. You have options of going somewhere without jumping in a car. Public transit's kind of strained here, I realize, but you can actually walk over to the store. You can talk to somebody on the way. It's a safe path to travel. And either it's a local access road, or if it's a sidewalk, it's not always right beside an arterial, a major collector. Or if it's a trail, it's separated, those kinds of things. Now you can get that small town feel or community feel, I guess you could say, in a big city too. That kind of traditional neighborhood development, those kinds of approaches. We have some of that. We probably could demonstrate it a lot better. I think Arroyo is headed to some of that, the way they're laying the streets out. So where I live too is very burby here. So to go anywhere, there's a little store in the corner, and it's not bad. But to go anywhere, you're gonna either ride a bike or walk a ways, which is okay. It's just a little far.
Yeah, I agree with what Jacques said about if the most small towns in America are not typically super diverse. They have other virtues, but diversity probably isn't one of them. And I think Moab, given our population size, we are unusually diverse. If you look at other towns our size, I think we're at one extreme end on various sorts of diversity scales. Maybe not racial diversity, but lots of political diversity. And so for that reason, it's worth mentioning the diversity.
Right. You said that's kind of what I was getting at. You said that better than I did, Kevin.
Okay, Trish, any other comments?
Perhaps we could use the word, the unique small town feel of Grand County, because it is unique.
Yeah, it's funny out here. I mean, I think part of the small town feel is like a little bit the agrarian nature, and like some of it is driving. Like you drive down Spanish Valley Drive and there's not much traffic and it's small and rural. Like it's a rural feel. Because like even in town, the blocks are so huge. Like I live pretty much downtown, and like walking takes a long time, so I often bike. We don't have a very walkable.
Maybe we're getting off topic here, but I guess to me, the first thing that comes to mind in small town feel is socially small town. Like you can walk into a grocery store and you probably recognize a lot of the people there. And I think people like Sarah, who spent almost their entire lives here, might not be, but I remember when I first came here, that kind of blew me away. It's like, whoa. So. But again, maybe I'm taking us off topic. Sorry.
Well, it helps to define things too. When I first moved here, the guy that owns this place, Eric Plum. You know him, Trish? I take it he's out in Spanish Valley too.
Yeah.
He's actually from Phoenix, and he says he loves this place because it's like Phoenix, only little, and it's little, and people are really friendly. Now the big city's a bit different, and Phoenix has places that are friendly too. But I think the small town feel gives it that friendly vibe, friendly aspect, and just from the number of people that you have, and also there's an energy with tourism. I think that helps too. I don't know what the results would. Have we done tourism surveys and found out what tourists thought about the small town feel here? I think some people would think that was a negative. Obviously, if they're coming from a big city and they like a big city, and they're just coming here to recreate. But anyway, we could
sitting at the counter of a busy tourist spot, a bike shop. I hear people all the time appreciate the small town feel of Moab, and they're surprised that, you know, they did a tour with somebody one day and they knew the person that they were talking to on a different tour the next day. And people remark on that all the time.
Yeah.
Tourists, I mean.
Okay, Trish, anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope, I'm good.
You're
Thank
happy,
you.
huh? Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're back to values. We have 10 to 3, doing a time check here a little bit. And we don't necessarily, we've got some prioritization here. Did you want to go through that at all? Or change any of the numbers around here, Trish, now that you've heard everything? I mean, we'll do some comparisons to what Sarah had, and I assume everyone's okay with the numbers that Sarah had, or are kind of okay with the numbers in that order. This helps us
You mean just okay with the breakdown, or?
Yeah. So are we okay with this breakdown, and are we okay with the prioritization?
Well, I think my prioritization was pretty different from Trish, and I assume it's pretty different from a lot of folks.
But is it, the document isn't going to prioritize these? It's just a question of, do they make it onto the short list or not?
That's right. That's
Oh,
right.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. So like the 5 that Kevin condensed down to.
Yeah, that's right. And I can work on this, so I can do the homework. So I just wanted to see if there's any other comments here. Okay, that's good for now. So proposed, Kevin, the first one that we had, which Kevin is proposing.
Okay, so I'll try to be quick since we're running out of time. And again, some of these I think should be demoted to later pages rather than the short list. But I was, again, trying to say things in closer, plain English rather than something that seems jargony, even though I know that's subjective. So, coordinate the extent possible. I really don't have much more to say about that. I think, the rewrites I proposed in these, the things that are visible on the screen right now, wasn't really about content. It's just about language and trying to say things in a more readily understandable way.
You didn't like my proposals, Kevin? Is that what you're saying?
I thought they sounded a little jargony.
Oh yeah, okay.
They sounded like they're written someone who does this kind of thing for a living.
That's rhetoric, planning rhetoric, yeah. Yeah. So community character, does that in a range of housing types? I guess that is jargony for sure.
Oh, let's see. I'm looking.
So so the built environment. That's my question, I guess.
Okay, so that's something I. One comment about the built environment is that, I mean, we're a small town, so it doesn't matter nearly as much here as it does in a larger city. And then the urban, if you can call it that, the urban part of Spanish Valley or Grand County is not going to be governed by this document. That's Moab City. And so we're really talking about the suburbs here. And to me, the built environment it becomes much less important if we're talking about things outside of Moab city limits. And so I certainly agree, and it is important in the more densely developed part of Moab, and it's very important in the places where most people live in this country. But so if you're asking why I omitted that section from it, that's why.
Okay. And so have you seen bad built environment in the county?
Yeah, that's a good question. So just off the top of my head, I mean, some parts of the county are really spread out, and I think it's just a matter of, do people like the way their neighbor's house looks or not? The areas that are a little bit more dense, there's an issue like, should we have sidewalks or not? There's a lot of very expensive, highly desirable neighborhoods. I'm sitting in one right now on my travels that have no sidewalks at all. but the streets are very low traffic and people just walk in the middle of the road and move over when a car comes by. So I think is a tricky, that kind of thing is a tricky question. Just when do we start to need sidewalks and things like that? So yeah, maybe the short answer to your question is I'm not sure. I should think about it more. To your question of, are there parts of the unincorporated part of the county that are badly built at the moment?
Yeah, badly oriented to the street, not very good connectivity to between.
Yeah, okay. No,
lots.
I think that's a fair point you make, that those kinds of things are important. It wasn't what came to immediately to mind when we talked about built environment, but point well taken.
You're right. Those are more urban types of questions. But as Sarah says, the rural character can be accented more with more kind of community gardens, landscaping, xeriscaping, of course, or something that's drought resistant. Thinking in terms of rain gardens and trail connectivity. Those are all built environment, and those are things you don't change easy. Once you get this, once you get the infrastructure in, it doesn't change much later.
And then something else, which I think is, if it's not exactly this topic, it's an adjacent one, is a subject to debate for at least the 30 years that I've lived here, has been basically sort of funky, derelict cars in your front yard Moab versus more manicured Moab, and that's been an ongoing debate in our community. And I think typically the people in charge, like us and our predecessors, have been pretty cautious about trying to change things. I mean, there are certainly people in our community who very much want it to look a little more well kept up and don't like the sort of combination front yard / junkyard look. I'm saying that facetiously. I'm actually on the side of leaving it the way it is for the most part.
So gentrification.
But it's something that gets debated a lot, and I think a lot of people that whether something looks quote nice or junky, and that's been an issue in our community for a long time, and maybe it is something we should try to tackle in the plan.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard two things there, but it should be considered, but you're willing to do it slowly.
I'm just saying we should ask the question. Maybe the best solution is that the general plan is silent on that issue, as it has often been in the past. Maybe.
Yeah.
But
a few years back, when we were working on looking at code enforcement and cleaning up, there was that debate, and I think many of us feel that we don't want to start to look real gentrified and that everybody's rich. But at the same time, we want to protect our emergency responders. And so when we wrote it, and I don't remember, Chris might remember, we wrote it in a way that it was more how things were stored and kept in a manner that made it safe as opposed to what you kept. Because, we try to come to some type of balance between everything has to look pristine, but at the same time, we need to respect our emergency responders, because every time a fireman goes to the hospital, it's usually when they respond to a residence that has somewhat been a hoarder or has a lot of trash around their place, unknown trash.
Yeah, I think that was the last iteration of debate. I remember those meetings, but I guess I would interpret that as a 90% victory for the leave things the way they are folks. That we set a very, if you've got so much junk in your yard that it's a problem for firemen, that has to be cleaned up. But if it's merely an eyesore, the county did not weigh in on that. I think it's
that it had to be stored in a way that was safe.
Yeah,
that wasn't collecting water for mosquitoes. That that people wouldn't trip over wire if they had to respond to your house for an emergency.
And for the record, I thought that was a good decision. But I'm also noting that a lot of people in the community disagree with me, and they would like more aesthetic standards imposed. And
well, That would just bring in more people that want to have second homes.
I think that's why I thought it was a good decision. I agree.
Yeah,
But-
you know, that,
but I think
that takes away right there from the small town feel when, you know, everybody that's buying property is a second homer. And they're the ones that want everything, not all. There are residents that live here all the time, but I think a lot of the complaints come from people who would have it look like Aspen or out, you know, Vale.
But I think this began, you know, I started out saying the built environment isn't important. And then John pointed out that built environment could be interpreted to mean some things that are important in, you know, less densely populated areas of the county. And this seems to me like this is part of that. That's the reason I'm bringing it up here.
I guess I'm kind of confused. Like, if we're going to delete this value, maybe we shouldn't wordsmith it, but I guess we're trying to highlight ideas that we want to carry forth into different parts of the general plan. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, that's part of it, is fleshing out, you know, this isn't all of just the 7 values. It'll actually start to help me get a feel for where your priorities are in the general plan, which I obviously get to weigh in on again. So one of the aspects in planning, which you probably heard, there's 2 words that are used in planning. One's called revitalization, which is basically tolerating what you already have, or accepting what you have, and making sure that safety issues are handled both from the people that are responding and the people that live there. Nuisance areas tend to attract certain types of nefarious behavior in some cases, depending how much the nuisance is there, and it affects the people that live there more than they realize. So it's helping people help themselves, you could say. The other term that's used in planning is redeveloping. Redeveloping is an aggressive form of going in and cleaning up something. It's actually and it is the ultimate in gentrification. And it's actually getting rid of what you might call slum clearing. And you do that through either, and this is very aggressive, I realize, eminent domain. Sometimes that's done just to clear the slums. I don't think we're in that area, of course, but lots of cities are. And that's a very aggressive way of retooling and starting over again. And sometimes that appears in a general plan, that type of very aggressive approach to planning. I don't think we're there, but I don't think that's going to be in the general plan. I've seen people react to that part of it when it is, though. So yeah, we don't have this one. This does help, back to Sarah's point, this does help clarify priorities within the general plan and helps us frame this so that you can look at where this fits. Okay, the other one was, I think we got most of this. It was just the built environment. Which we can still explore later. We don't have to spend all the time on that one. So I'm going to carry on here and go to the next one. This was Mary's area. You were assigned this area, Mary, but I don't think I saw anything from you directly on this one.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I got sidetracked on that other one, spent all my time.
Yeah. So you might, I don't know. We must act locally, think regionally. I think a lot of this is being translated to maintain and enliven a small town feel that reinforces safety and a community feel for all citizens, residents, and visitors. I think that this one's pretty well captured. When I say I had this,
Yeah,
you guys
we wrapped that up in my vision statement. You know, I was kind of putting it both together. That was acting locally and thinking regionally and globally was the big portion, and I wrapped both assignments into one.
Okay.
I think the only thing that statement is missing is that the whole like multicultural or diverse, like wanting to highlight
put that over there.
That.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that one's pretty.
My list of indicators were up there. So yeah, I wrapped it all into one. Sorry, I didn't follow instructions well.
Well, it's okay because we're going to vet this anyway. And this is just, the reason I put indicators in here is just to help you anchor how you're measuring things and thinking about that. Okay, we'll move to the next one. This
real
is
quick, John.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I really liked Mary's comment before about adding the term unique. So like enliven the unique small town feel. But yeah, otherwise, yeah.
Okay, so
As we are a unique small town.
okay. Okay with that one? 2, that's 2. We're at 3:05, time check. Okay. This is Trish's. Anything, Trish, that you want to comment on here as far as your proposal?
No, I mean, the existing one was pretty wordy. Mine is just as wordy, and I'm okay to cut that way down, or if we end up putting, we just merge it into others, because here we talk about the diverse perspectives and backgrounds. And yeah, to me, diversity goes well beyond ethnic diversity. It goes into cultural diversity, but also just diverse perspectives. Like, to me, that's a big thing. I think we need to be respectful of that. So like I said, mine was pretty wordy, but so was the other one.
Yeah.
So we could, a lot of that is, you know, in some of the other, like, quality of life, we've already discussed that. Walkability, that's in another one. So
We were talking about putting yours in small town feel, right?
Yeah,
This is
that's
kind of
fine.
an articulation of.
Yeah, I'm good with that. If it gets parsed out into other values.
You're giving up too easy, Trish.
Yeah, I'm running out of fight. I'm running out of fight.
Yeah. Well, it's very nicely said.
It's poetic. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one if Trish is okay with that and everyone else is okay. Sarah, any other comments on yours?
I think, oh, mine in there, we are a community residing amidst vast swaths of public land, and as such acknowledge our responsibility to be stewards of those lands for preservation of dark skies, quietude, wildlife, rivers, watersheds, cultural resources, and scenic beauty. I mean, I just pulled that from our public lands vision statement, and I don't know. I think it's important, yeah, to acknowledge our responsibility here.
Any comments or?
I also like the acknowledging our responsibility. I approve of including that high up in our document.
Yeah, very positive, right, Kevin? And takes ownership, accountability. Okay. Okay, Gabe.
Yeah, so I had said that like I had set out B as maybe the one that I would go with. Though again, I don't know, maybe it took the same tact as previous, where I just, rather than really try to flesh out the thoughts, I just tried to make this most simple statement possible, that in the hopes that it would be fleshed out in other, I guess, in other areas. But you know, I think like what I mentioned, like endemic intergenerational poverty in D, which I see as a, you know, really serious issue here, that the county has a role in sort of combating. But you know, that could easily be included in the needs of those that are vulnerable. But you know, some of the things that I'm thinking of, and you can see where my thinking is, and the indicators are like quality healthcare, behavioral health services, support for the unhoused, support for minorities, in general, bringing the concerns of the voiceless to the forefront, and you know, expending the effort necessary and the resources necessary through our budgeting process to support people who otherwise don't have anywhere else to go.
I like it, Gabe. I think, like, the only addition I might add in there is like affordability or something. Because I know that people are vulnerable if they can't afford it, but I think that Moab is entering this time when affordability is just going to be the issue for people.
Yeah, maybe affordability, maybe that speaks to income, in general speaks to income levels, and we don't even need to necessarily tie it to housing per se. It would just be left at affordability somehow. Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Anything else there, Gabe, or anyone else? Okay. Kevin had one in that area too. Kevin, do you want to talk about that?
No, I think I sent that before Gabe sent his version. So I don't
Okay.
have any strong.
Okay. Okay, Jacques. And Kevin's commented on this one too.
Yeah, I'll go out on a limb and say that writing is an area of weakness of mine. Not something I'm entirely comfortable with, but I think responsible economic development was a big one for me, not just economic development. And I also really like the adventurous spirit, or the spirit of our adventurous community. That was yours, John. It's a common thread with people I know in Moab. Most people who make it here have an adventurous spirit, I think, and I like the way that's captured.
I agree with you, Jacques. I really like that adventurous spirit too. That John came up with that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I just translated it from what I thought. Yeah, I heard you say. No, I took it. Yeah, you can't. No, I think you guys said
You
this.
can take it. You can take it, John. You take that compliment.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think it actually came from, I can't remember. It's in the, but it's in the document. I'll find it. Yeah, so I might have put spirit in adventures, but I think adventure came out in our SWOT exercise, and, kind of risk takers. And I mean it in a positive way. I don't mean negative. And I think that came out, that kind of the fabric of the community is that it's like the rocks that surround us, the red rocks. We merge with the red rocks in a respectful way.
I also a national to global. I think because I think we are we're very much a global destination. We hear in normal years tons of different languages in the grocery store or in our shops in town, and we're on the radar globally. Absolutely.
I guess I wanted to push back a little bit against that. To me, the adventurous spirit, it sounded more like marketing language. Like if we're trying to, how are we presenting ourselves to the world in terms of tourists and things like that. And it, maybe I'm understanding it differently, but it seemed less relevant to how we plan to make the community work for residents. And I think probably most, I consider myself an adventurous spirit, but I don't know how that would inform, general plan decisions. And similarly, I think a lot of what we're trying to do, or will be trying to do as we get more specific in the planning process, is some push. There's one set of things we would do if what we wanted to do was attract tourists, and there's other things we would try to do if we want to make the community livable for people who live there, and sometimes those things conflict. So I don't know. I mean, maybe those thoughts are a little bit vague and meandering, but I was not as fond of adventurous spirit as some of the others were.
What's the negative for you with that, Kevin? Maybe I'm not hearing the negative.
Well, there's another phrase that someone used. This, I didn't make this up, but in the context of talking about how Moab markets itself to the world, are we adult Disneyland or not?
Okay.
And there was a general, so there was that sort of negative, that there's more to Moab than just people coming and, getting their adrenaline up, doing things on public lands. So, I mean, I think that aspect of our community is very much here, but I don't think it needs additional encouragement. So sorry, I might be interpreting these phrases differently than other people. I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be negative here, but I guess I am being a little bit negative.
As far as general plan references are concerned, this can go into a parks and recreation analysis. This can go into trails. It can go into backwoods areas. It can go into the ranges of different types of outdoor experiences, access to the outdoors, encouraging a range of different types of access, not just motorized. So obviously adventure comes in all different kinds of elements. I realize it's got that Disney-esque feel to it in some ways.
I want to try to say a little bit differently. If I were to describe what to me personally, is important about Moab and the people I hang out with, things like that, then I think adventurous spirit would be, a big part of that. But when I think about planning decisions we're going to have to make in the future, and what kind of values are going to inform those, then that word seems much less relevant. So
what value would you use for which one you use for adventure? What's your word for adventurous?
I just wouldn't mention. I would talk about calm and quiet and small town values, and
calm
people want to come here, and have too much adventure, maybe they should think twice. And
okay.
Colonizing a different town.
I think we had calm and quiet here somewhere. Where was it? Sarah had it somewhere here.
In the public lands.
In the public lands one, yeah.
My comment here is that, good job, Jacques. I think that we need to include the economic diversification, though, as like central, because of all the effort that people and our staff and stuff have been putting towards changing the economic development department to economic diversification. So I don't know, maybe that's just, we encourage economic diversification and incentives that bolster the social fabric. And then my comment on adventure spirit is that I think it goes in the sentence or whatever, but I do think it's a little misplaced in the economic diversification bullet point.
Unless we're talking about adventuring into more diverse economic activities, like
right.
Yeah. Like, something that's not tourism based. The adventure of small manufacturing, in a community that's mostly focused on tourism.
And then one other comment is that when I guess it makes sense, and it's like I'm warming up to it, but when people say built environment, I have to like translate that in my mind into something, and I'm still not even sure what it is. I think it's jargon.
Built environment?
Yeah.
So streets, roads, sidewalks, buildings, landscape.
Yeah, I think
all the hard surfaces.
I think it's a useful term, but I don't think people like casually use it. So in the final draft, I think we should figure out how to say, well, I guess it's fine. It's fine.
No, where's built in?
I'm warming up to it.
Well, but I think it is a good point that, I mean, if we think of who's going to read this other than future planners and decision makers, and I think some members of the general public might actually read this, and I think, yeah, they've probably never seen the term built environment before, so we might want to have, I don't know if it's a glossary or just somewhere explain what some of these more jargony terms mean, because they probably are really useful. That's why professional planners end up using them all the time, because it's something you definitely want to refer to. But if it's not part of common everyday English, people might understand the term in a way that's different from how it was intended.
Okay. Yeah, point well taken. Sometimes you know how you get inured to certain words, and that was one. You just use it all the time.
Does it sound worse to say natural and man-made surroundings? Or
yeah, that's right. It's artificial. It's all the aspects that are not natural.
Right. That's what it says to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably exactly the right word, built environment. It's, it's the environment, the part that we build ourselves. So it's a very straightforward term, but it's just unfamiliar.
Yeah, it can be misconstrued, especially with environment built. Yeah. Okay, Kevin, any comments on yours here? You added some things.
I don't know. I feel like I'm trampling over other people's adventurous spirit. So I feel bad about being like, and I do want to emphasize that, yeah, being an adventurous spirit is an important part of my life, but I'm just having more trouble seeing how it fits into planning decisions.
Okay, so we need to search for another word that's more compatible.
Well, no, I'm just one person. Maybe a lot of people like adventurous spirits, so maybe it should stay because that's.
Well, it's actually the name of the plan, Kevin. See, it's right at the top here.
Yeah, my comment is I think it's kind of a fun term in this context because it does appear to me to be applied to areas like the economy where it seems kind of incongruous, but it's kind of fun. But it seems like in none of the other statements are we using kind of flowery language like that. So maybe it's just a little out of place. I don't know, but I think it's fun. I don't know.
Does it set us apart? Does it tell the world why we're unique and different? And
well, I think if we're going to elevate it to some short thing, then my opposition grows much stronger because I think most people think of Moab as adult Disneyland, the land of adventure, and I think we need to push back very hard against that and say, Moab is a place where people live and where you should be respectful and quiet when you're in town, and the type of if we want more tourists, they should be octogenarians, taking a bus tour of Arches or something like that.
You can still be Disney-esque when you're an octogenarian or a septuagenarian.
I guess, but I think a lot of the town has been shaped by sort of marketing, and it's caused problems, and I think we need to. It's hard to change those things, but I think we need to start pushing it the other direction. So.
Yeah, I can recognize that sort of stuff, but the flip side of that coin for me is that I would like to see, access to some of this stuff preserved through planning. I think that having bike trails and running trails that are accessible from home without having to drive someplace is an important part of what people enjoy in Moab. And I think that, having the ability to adventure is something that residents would like to preserve. So whether this is the place for it or not, I think that there is some value to kind of recognizing that for citizens and not necessarily worrying about how tourists will read this. I mean, this isn't a tourist document. This is planning for our citizens.
Okay. Yeah, and those things you listed, I totally agree. Those are important. For me, it would be more like active recreation, or I don't know, but yeah, I agree with what you said.
Yeah, we want to celebrate and support the love our residents have for access to, to the lands around us, kind of. Yeah.
Well, and I think, I didn't at all. I don't know. I didn't look at this as an advertisement, and trying. I look at it more like, I think really the entire West are people with adventurous spirit, in the sense that who are the people that came West originally? So I'm also looking back at it historically, like the uranium miners, people that built this town, like those were people of adventurous spirit. I guess I'm looking at it more as community members and the people also settlers. And, so I wasn't looking at it like, oh, let's bring more people to adventure. It was just the people that came here and what, since settlement times.
I think it's good to include in the economic development section, actually, because perhaps it will be a deterrent if it's too adventurous of a place to invest in.
That the word can definitely go both ways there.
Okay, there's a lot of focus on that, huh? It's good. Evan, if we left you with 6 minutes, but you can run over time. But you got a mouthful of peanuts now.
I do. What timing? Yeah, so I just went with we encourage and strengthen diverse, safe travel options that connect our community locally, regionally, and beyond by integrating multiple mobility modes and fostering collaboration while planning for the future. I think a lot of this kind of went back to the idea that we were hitting on earlier of like, well, where does our transportation plan fit? And so, you know, trying to kind of have a header for those kind of plans. I think a lot of those indicators were kind of tricky for me. Like I wasn't real familiar with a lot of the kind of things that are out there. So I was just kind of riffing on a few things from a kind of high level. And there might be some more kind of standard metrics that would be useful in these.
Yeah. As you probably know, UDOT's got counters on highway, on the highway, on 191, but there's no counters on the side areas. So you get pretty good freight counts and traffic counts. Those traffic counts, freight counts are important, I think, for the other roads, major arterials anyway. It's hard to measure pedestrian travel. That the transportation consultant's going to get at parking and the numbers of parking, but even then that's kind of difficult to get at unless you have people out there actually, and you can use it with drones sometimes nowadays too. But bike trips and bike counts and those trip indicators are important too. So those, you try to get as much data as you can as far as ways of mobility is concerned. The other one is shuttles. And the interview process they're setting up right now, we just went through yesterday with stakeholders, is pretty good. I think they'll have a fairly well-rounded feedback, but to get that data to support it is kind of a challenge in some cases, especially the non-auto freight ones. Even the freight one's kind of hard to get because it really is. The freight counter is going to actually get some ideas, but once you're off the main roads, it's harder to get that.
Yeah, and I think another challenge that we have here is the seasonality and the peaks that we have. So I mean, oftentimes these things are built for averages, and if you took a count in late November versus Labor Day weekend or something, you're going to get a lot different results, even just not just the day itself, but the time of day. You know, if you're out there at 8 o'clock when people are heading out for their adventures, there's going to be a lot different count than like 2 in the afternoon.
You got to get that word in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're trying to do those shoulder seasons too. So even though the tubes have been out in the summer, they'll have them back out hopefully in the fall here too.
Yeah. And another thing that I couldn't really figure out how to capture was I think that a lot of this focuses on kind of like the downtown area and kind of sprawling out from there. And it didn't really get into like Thompson or Castle Valley or, you know, even there's a lot of residents who don't even live in one of those towns that are, you know, we should be aware of connectivity and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, and we've already had discussions about like helicopters and the appropriateness for them in the valley and private airstrips and you know, with the timeline of how often we look at these general plans, I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing private flying cars happening, you know, and we're like, well, do we have to have some rules and regs around this?
Yeah, autonomous vehicles for sure. AVs.
Yeah, more drones, that kind of stuff. And so I don't really know all the indicators, but and another thing with the indicators is like trying to foresee, well, like if there was a bike path here, you know, would people be riding their bikes more if it was nicer, you know? And so like back to your point of like eminent domain or whatever, like if there was a bike lane on the side of 191 that was just kind of like a white stripe down the highway, it probably wouldn't get ridden a ton. But if there was a nice shady bike path along Pack Creek that was enjoyable to be on, people would probably utilize it without a destination, but just like a after dinner dog walk, go for a half mile, and so I think it's hard to kind of judge the alternative modes of transportation use just by like, because it's got to be nice, right?
Define nice. I'll say that. Define nice.
Yeah. Pleasant.
No, that's good. We'll come up with something.
Yeah.
I
If
mean,
you're like 2 feet from a semi, you're not
Yeah.
going to be like, and it's 100 degrees out and zero shade. It's not going to be like the same as listening to birds and
Right.
watching for deer along the creek. And yeah,
Although the one with the semi is a lot more adventurous, though, Evan.
it is to a degree. Extreme. Do we have extreme in here someplace?
Yeah.
With like 3 X's.
Does anyone know if they're gonna plant trees along the 191?
I don't think UDOT funding goes for anything like landscaping, and so that would be up to like local efforts.
Evan, I really like what you say, and I think it's super important. And I go back to that question we were having: is sustainability the larger lens, and then the multimodal transportation fits within it, or I don't know? Because I in the chat I put a list of things that I also thought should be included with the sustainability section, but I'm not sure how we ultimately organize it. I mean, transportation is so huge and very important.
Yeah, and I don't know if it really captured it in the short brief thing, but I think that things like Highway 6 and connectivity like to bigger urban areas is worth weighing in on in the near future too. And I also was trying to figure how to capture preserving areas that have that rural, rustic modes of transport, like dirt roads through the Book Cliffs, as opposed to other options. And so I didn't really know a way to kind of capture that.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, and that's pretty well it for this round. And the goal would be to recraft this all and come back with a vision statement and either 5, 4, 5, 6, or 7 values, and indicate a list of indicators. I did have a list here, and there is a standard list, of course, and then the state will have a list too. So those are always under development. So that kind of is the wrap. I'm not sure, Mary, what the commission wants to do next. I'm not here September the 7th. So that's the next commission meeting, I believe. And I'm not here on the one after that either. So I'm thinking, if you're okay with this, we would vet this through Chris and Mallory and department heads and set up a time to do some engagement with internally and come back with something. And I don't know if it's a special meeting or it's a joint meeting. We're looking at putting a workshop together with you on housing at some point here, on overnight accommodation overlay, which the planning commission wants to engage the county commission on. So I don't know if that's a special meeting, or how do you do those joint workshops?
Often they come to us on a similar thing like this prior to a regular scheduled meeting.
We do have an off week here in August that we could potentially make use of.
You
We
mean
have
the
a
third?
5th of August.
Yeah, there's a 31st.
We could have a special meeting on the 31st, I guess. would you be here on the 31st, John, or
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
too soon?
No, I can be here for sure.
Would that be too soon, or would that give you time to meet with department heads and such?
Chris, I think we've got a department head meeting coming up. Don't we have one a month? I'm not sure if we got one this month or not. Or Mallory? We could just feed off of that one. Yeah, we can make that. I think we can make that happen. Chris or Mallory, you might want to weigh in.
I think it would be we might have to do something separately because just the normal leadership meetings are already pretty long. And so, but with department heads, we might be able to, get some feedback via email or do one-on-one meetings, et cetera, and compile the feedback so that we can address it.
Okay, because I did send it out to all the department heads, but I didn't get anything back from anyone.
Well,
maybe it's just me. Maybe if you send.
Everybody's so busy, and so in my experience, you have to kind of reach out one-on-one to get anything, to get a significant response. So that's just kind of the way it goes. And so I would endeavor to try to reach out to each one of them individually and see if we can get them to do a review and provide.
Okay. So I think
John,
we could.
Is it just September 7th that you're away, or are you away for a long block of time?
No, just the 7th.
So for me, the best would be either the 6th or the 8th, someday close to that meeting.
The 6th is Labor Day.
Okay, then the 8th.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The 8th Wednesday, yeah. So don't put an extra meeting, just move the commission day. Is that what you're thinking? Or just put a workshop together on the 8th?
Put a workshop, a Wednesday workshop rather than a Tuesday. But anyway, it's just my 2 cents.
I've got something at 5 o'clock on the 8th, but
But
I've got this time on the 7th.
The 8th works better for me. I'm actually probably not going to be here until at least 4 on the 7th, but I have the 8th available all day.
Yeah, and I don't know if it worked, but we also have a 5th Tuesday this month, which we sometimes use.
So that was the previous suggestion.
Oh, sorry.
So that's been mentioned.
Either of those times work for me, but on Wednesday I have a meeting at 11 to 12.
So sometime between noon and 5 on Wednesday, maybe.
You like that day better because it's out further? Is that, Kevin? Is that what you're suggesting? Or?
Well, I think also I'll probably be traveling the rest of August. So for me, the 5th Tuesdays are days that I tend to schedule time away from all that. But
yeah, that's a lot of times I'll look at that week and say, oh boy, that's a week nothing's usually planned. So I plan to do more personal stuff that week. So should we tentatively plan on the Wednesday the 8th, say at 1 o'clock for 2 hours? Okay.
I'm good. Okay, and we'll do some department head vetting in the meantime.
Okay.
Yeah,
it looks like, okay, thank you. Now, Mallory, we have a different Zoom for the next meeting, correct? Or not? I've had so many emails.
Oh, no, it is the same Zoom, but what happened is I had to break out the packet. So it's a separate packet link, but the same Zoom for all of our meetings today.
Okay, so we can just pause, we can just stay on this and just take a 20-minute break.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. on up.